Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussions, news, and interviews, presenting The Film Scene with Illeana Douglas. Illeana is an actress, writer, author, and film historian with a need to discuss movies that borders on obsession. You'll learn the history of movies one great story at a time. The Film Scene is the deep cuts of movie podcasts, featuring movies we love by the people who made them. And now, Illeana Douglas.
Why, hello everyone. Welcome to the Film Scene. I am Illeana Douglas. I am here with Jeff Graham. Hello, Jeff.
I'm not looking as festive as you are, Illeana.
Geez,
I dropped the ball here.
I did the full. This is from the 80s.
Yes.
This was my grandmother's and then my mom's, and now it's mine.
It's great. If I may, it's very good with your eyes. It really brings out the color.
Brings out the green.
Yes.
This is my Christmas, my go-to, and the leggings.
Yes.
I've got the velvety leggings.
And the boots, I gotta say.
And the boots, right?
Yes.
Show off my dancing skills.
It's very impressive, yes. For our podcast listeners, you'll have to check out the YouTube video to see what may be the most festive outfit of the year. It's great.
Are you into ugly? What do you wear on Christmas morning?
Oh, man, I'm like I'd like to think of myself as kind of intellectual. I take myself seriously, but around the holidays, I am like onesie, wake up. If it's not a onesie, it's Christmas PJs. I love just I'm so earnest about the holidays. Like I love, even on Thanksgiving, I wake up and I watch the Macy's Day Parade, like right when it starts.
Yeah.
You can't bring the Ohio out of me. Like I'm just like a casserole eating holiday lover, you know?
I think that's great. Well, I've got that Connecticut, New England thing.
Yeah.
So I too have that. Got to go out in the snow for a little bit. But New Englanders pride themselves on shoveling their own driveway.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that a big thing in Ohio?
Totally. I mean, my wife and I talk about this. We're both from the Midwest. She's from Indiana. I'm from Ohio. And we talk about there's just no character building chore element to living in Los Angeles.
You're right.
So if we start a family here, how are we going to discipline our kids when the weather's always perfect?
There's
no leaves.
Yes. And in fact, that's a big couple bonding thing.
Totally.
Is getting out of the snow.
Yep. Raking
Somebody's
the leaves.
got to drive where you push the car
Oh my
out.
gosh. Scraping the car. Yeah, there's not enough inconveniences in this city, which is a very privileged sentence to say, but how do you build character in your kiddos?
You're right. That's
I know.
When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, and so we couldn't afford an antenna for the house, so we only got one channel, which was CBS, and then my mom thought she'd surprise us one Christmas, so she broke down. She bought the $20 antenna, but she didn't buy the rotor. Which was in the old days, the rotor was the thing on the television that moved the antenna, so you could get the different. I know. See, you're so young, you don't even remember what a rotor is.
You know what? I feel like early stages of my life, I remember.
It was this gigantic box, and it went and it turned the antenna.
Nice.
But my mom didn't buy that, and so we had a ladder. We had an old colonial house, and so we had a ladder on the side of the house. And I kid you not, one of my brothers would lean out the window, and I'd scramble up to the roof, and I would turn it, so we could watch Mork and Mindy or something.
I love it.
And then scramble back down, and of course you'd be watching it, and invariably the wind would blow, and it'd be like, you'd lose the channel and be back to CBS. So I only sporadically saw other channels. I mainly saw CBS. But it made me appreciate Christmas. Something like that. All right. Let's talk about movies. I'm very excited. I saw Uncut Gems last night. I was at the premiere.
I am dying to see this movie. It sounds like take a Xanax before you go.
Yes. Here's my tip. I went with my friend Wayne Fetterman, who, if anybody wants to check, he's a dead ringer for Daniel Goldman, the Dems prosecutor. Look at Adam. Oh my God, Adam Sandler. So, but anyway, it's really a guy movie.
Yeah.
But I went, I really enjoyed it. A packed house, great way to see it. And, but I just kept grabbing Wayne and oh God, please, please make it stop. Why is he doing these things? So it has, I spoke to the filmmakers afterwards. And I said, I definitely sensed a kind of a Michael Mann Thief vibe, the James Caan movie, also the Dustin Hoffman movie called Straight Time. So it's got that vibe of the 70s, just an incredible performance. Very disturbing, very gritty, but very, very interesting. And one of the main things I liked about it, aside from it being a very good, compelling movie, it was a world I knew nothing about. And I always, sometimes like, okay, let's give me another movie about this. But I knew I was riveted because I don't know anything about the Diamond District in New York City.
It's like black market jewelry, right? Is the world we're in for this film?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and jewels, and it's very disturbing.
These filmmakers are
great.
These are the Safdie brothers who, in some ways, kind of feel like our generation's Coens, maybe. Different types of movies, but I think in the same way that the Coens do genre movies with like an elegance, I think the Safdies do the same thing where, they're kind of putting together straight ahead thrillers, but with these kind of weird, quirky elements that sort of elevates the genre.
Well, what I love about it is a lot is done with the lighting and with the shots without the camera going insane. I could actually follow the story. There's some fantastic intercutting between scenes, which really adds to some of the tension. There are a couple sort of cinematic surprises, a couple laughs in there, well needed. But I thought the look of it was really good. But I just didn't know what was going to happen in the next minute. And so I guess that, for me, it kept me on the edge of the seat. And I was up all night thinking about it. So you can't get Adam Sandler out of your head after watching the movie. So I highly recommend it. It's just an interesting film.
It's interesting, too. I think there's, like, celebrity cameos in it, right? Like, isn't Kevin Garnett, like, a major player? How does he do?
Excellent.
Really?
There's a lot of non-actors. That was the question I asked them, too. There's a couple people are so good in the film, and that's why I leaned over. I said, if that person's an actor, I would be shocked. And so sure enough, there's a lot of people in the film that are not actors, but do a really great job. And again, this goes back to I think the editing and the directing. They did tell me they went through a number of cuts of the film.
Oh, wow.
It took them 10 years to make the movie, and they went through a lot of cuts, and to get what what the final outcome was. Great movie to see in a theater, though, I would say, as opposed to seeing it.
Well, while you talk about cuts, if they ever want to do like their own director's cut, they can call it Uncut Gems, the Uncut Gem version, and release it for all of us to enjoy.
Well, I also have to throw credit because I said, the movie started, the music. I said, I got a little bit of Tangerine Dream and, Michael Mann, the thief. And he goes, Mann's the man. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool.
There you go.
There you go.
Same wavelength.
So and then you saw Marriage Story. Now,
I finally saw it.
Okay, last week I was ranting that movies were too long, which I feel that they're a little bit too long. I saw a movie, Honey Boy.
Yes.
96 minutes, perfect. Really good movie. I thought it was very interesting, very compelling. Stayed with me. Another one I recommend. So 96 minutes is fine for a film. So what did you think of Marriage Story?
I thought Marriage Story, I'm going to be honest, was pretty perfect. I think it might be one. I'm not going to call it a masterpiece. I'm going to avoid the M word from our discussion from last year, but I loved it. Ryan was mentioning before we went on air that I'm writing a little something for our Popcorn Talk website. It's a little op-ed about my take on the movie.
Okay.
Despite the fact that it is like a courtroom divorce film, I found it to be a very romantic movie in a very kind of strange way. I think it's one of the most romantic movies I saw this year. And I think it has to do with the fact that when you see the couple, they're separating. It's a divorce movie. But when you see them interact before lawyers and courts get involved, there's an affection and an intimacy in their relationship. And it's not until there's litigation that it really drives them apart.
Right.
I almost feel like the movie's talking about the industry of divorce. I heard a critic talking about the idea of like the divorce industrial complex.
Yes.
How it's designed to make people money, but throughout that process, destroy relationships.
I think that's all valid. I mean, I would also say that didn't Kramer versus Kramer handle that same subject.
It did. But the
know?
thing with Kramer versus Kramer, and I do love that movie.
Howard Duff.
Yeah, I love the
So
performances, but I feel like you don't get to see the intimacy or affection of the relationship as much. I think what I like, and I thought was generous that Baumbach gave us in this movie, was we get a couple scenes like this scene where they're closing the security gate, when you can really see the aching love that these two still have for each other, kind of buried beneath all of the pain. That's how I read it.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I'm going to mention another film that is one of my favorite films, which is called Shoot the Moon. And Shoot the Moon is a film that I really loved, and I felt like that was my childhood.
Wow.
You know, there were more kids in that film. I think there were 3 kids. And that movie took it a step further in that not only were they getting a divorce, but, you know, she was embarking on a new relationship, and that is a very messy and at times violent film.
I can't wait to see it.
And that was like the ripping apart of a relationship. This couple, although again, I thought the acting was great. You know, I enjoyed the film. I just thought, you know, they're barely, to me, it was more about a couple that got married and didn't really know each other. You know, I mean, they were barely married before they were getting a divorce. How old is the kid?
That's a really interesting take, too. And they kind of refused to let them see each other. You know, I think that's a really interesting point, is maybe that's what the movie is saying, is by the time they finally let themselves see each other, it was too late.
Yeah.
You know?
And the other thing that just bothered me, is just a little critique, was that it felt awfully convenient that he was a very rich, successful person who could fly, you know, to California, and she very conveniently was a successful actress.
It's true.
So I didn't really see what the problem was. You know, I was like, I wasn't really
fine.
like my childhood where, you know, people are going to court and fighting over child support. And,
Yeah,
you know,
I feel like the device of a MacArthur Genius Grant, I've seen that in movies before. Where,
so many times.
I know. If you want to make sure
Cameron
someone's
Jenkins
smart,
used it in the Savages.
The Savages, yeah. Which I will say, Private Life last year. It was a movie not enough people talked about. Did you like Private Life?
Yes.
That might be my favorite movie of last year, and I feel like it got no love. I love Tamara Jenkins as a director, but so often we see the MacArthur Genius Grant just show up as a way to tell us that someone is smart, you know? It's a funny trope that I'm seeing more and more.
That is so interesting. You're right.
Yeah,
well, if you're going to call out movies from last year, one of my absolute favorite movies from last year, because we're going to get into women directors, Land of Steady Habits.
Oh, I didn't see it, but I heard it was beautiful.
Nicole Holfcetter is one of my absolute favorite directors. I think she's a genius.
Yeah.
I love anything she's ever done. I just think she's a terrific filmmaker. And that film, for me, was a great, really, really interesting film. Again, about a marriage.
Yeah.
About the breakdown.
I can't wait to see it.
Of a marriage, but that I related to more. I just didn't. I mean, again, I'm going to switch over to the Honey Boy. Uncut Gems. I personally like movies where the people are a little bit more complex. Movies about rich people and their problems, I chafe just a little bit. I don't know why that is. I find it a little bit harder to get into the story.
That's fair.
I don't know if that's my own upbringing or, I like people that are a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
That are in a predicament. And how did they get in this predicament? And how am I rooting for them to get out of it? In this particular case, like the fact that a marriage failed after 4 years because they didn't really know each other when they got involved.
Right.
The amount of screaming that was, that was screaming at each other, it verged for me on more like acting class. What I call acting class acting, as opposed to, sometimes when you're in a movie, I've done this too, you really go for it and you go, okay, great, I got that out of my system. Now let me modulate the performance. And, there were times that I would have, just because you can cry and emote, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna touch the performer. And so I think as a director, you really have to, that's something, emotion you have to be very, very careful of, I think, of, of that on screen. I'd love to know other people's what they think of Shoot the Moon, which is that is disturbing. I mean, my parents' divorce was just was like more like Shoot the Moon. It was more like they were really angry at each other, and this seemed to be very nice. Like I'd love to have a very wealthy, sophisticated lawyer helping you out, and it all seemed pretty great. Anyway, it's an interesting movie. Let's before we're going to talk about Christmas movies with Alonso Duralde. But before that, just let's briefly say that, yes, it's a disappointment with everything that female film directors have accomplished. Still, it's embarrassing that there are no female directors nominated for the Golden Globes. Absolutely a shame. And in fact, I made a point of mentioning that a bunch of films were put into the Library of Congress. Among them, Elaine May's A New Leaf, which is 1971. In the Hollywood Reporter, it says the first film directed and starring a woman. It is now. This is a misnomer that I was taught my entire life. When we did Trailblazing Women for TCM, women were making studio films, turn of the century, that they wrote, produced, and started. Maybe they weren't a 2-hour, but to say that it wasn't a studio film, they were studio films because they were working for studios. Alice Key Blaché, we had Pam Green on here, ran her own studio, therefore that is a studio film. So if you want to get into modern filmmaking, and if you want to say that the first modern filmmaker was Barbara Loden, who in 1970 made a film called Wanda. She wrote, produced, directed, and starred in it. It's a Criterion release, so people may want to check it out. So as much as I love Elaine May and champion A New Leaf, she is not the first filmmaker. And so again, we get these credits wrong so many times, and even within the credits, it's like, gee, isn't it unbelievable? She's the first woman in 1970, like they finally let this woman make the movie. And again, it's a misnomer. Women were always making films, writing, producing, editing films. So sorry to get on my
it buries decades of
that.
history, It's
because
crazy.
it makes it insignificant. And again, coming, with the same thing with the Golden Globe. Here's all some of the great films directed by women this year: Booksmart, Honey Boy, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, The Farewell. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of others, but all amazing films. And what the Golden Globe's response was, that well, maybe there should be a different category. It's women's movies, like that's what we used to say. A chick, I thought they're saying like women, let's make a special category, like an inferior category.
That's the implication.
And then the other complaint was, but women get to do a lot of things on TV. That was the other. What are these women complaining about? Get back in the kitchen. It's so.
They can watch The Great British Bake Off.
These stereotypes, they're so baked in, and that you find yourself, again, just sort of shaking your head. Stereotype. Women have always made movies. It's not a revelation. Women didn't suddenly, in the 70s, start to make movies. They were there at the beginning. Stereotype number one. Stereotype, number two. There does not need to be a special category for films directed by women. All of the movies that I saw, if you saw Honey Boy, you would not know if a man directed it or a woman directed it. And it's really challenging. Where we make steps forward and then we go backwards because of what people read. That's what I think anyway. All right. Well, enough of that. Let's talk about Christmas movies and bring in Alonso Duralde here. It's Christmas morning. I'm mouthing off. Alonso is a critic expert on Christmas films. He was the artistic director at the USA Film Festival Dallas for 5 years. He's also the former arts and entertainment editor at the National Gay and Lesbian magazine. He became a senior film critic for The Wrap, which also syndicates his reviews for Reuters. He appears on the TYT Network, What the Flick, co-hosts the podcast Breakfast All Day. His first book, 101 Must-See Movies for Gay Men, was published. Duralde was featured in writer Dennis Hensley's book. And your second book, which is out now, I'm going to hold it up, Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas, published in October by Limelight Editions, available on Amazon. We know how much book sales are important to us. But thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is a treat.
And you look very festive. You've got your Christmas.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sort of. I know. I would have gone red if I'd known you were doing green, but I think this worked either way.
So we're going to do Christmas movies, but it is a tradition on the show. Do you remember the first movie you saw and who took you to see it?
I do. Well, I'm the youngest of 7, so
wow.
my oldest sister is 13 years older than I am, and she and her high school boyfriend took me to see Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory in its original release, which scarred me for life and turned me into a lifelong movie fan, I think.
Now, which part, like watching the kids get sucked into
that tunnel scene? There's a chicken that gets beheaded, and there's a worm crawling across somebody's face. Like, that is, for a G-rated movie, that's really pushing it. But,
yes,
an iguana too, right? I think.
Eating a bug.
Yeah, very unsettling.
It's funny. The 70s and 80s ratings were just sort of like a suggestion.
Yes. I know. I grew up. Did you see? I remember on television they would have all the portrait of a teenage alcoholic.
Oh, right, yeah.
All the getting into drugs movies.
The whole Linda Blair cycle.
Yes, which only made you feel like if you left school you'd end up in prison.
Yeah, or you'd hitchhike and get picked up by a serial killer.
I know. So with your Christmas book that's out now, I mean, again, I guess I got to ask were you a fan of Christmas? Or or you just...
Yes, very much so. Again, big family, so that was always a great time of year. And also, I think the age difference plays in because Christmas was when everybody came home,
Yeah.
Because I was still, knocking around while everybody else was off in college or whatever. So yes, I've always loved Christmas. I've always loved movies, and I think inevitably it was, I was going to have to bring the two together.
Well, 7 kids, that must be an all day. My God.
Oh yeah, it's an event, and nowadays it's a major troop movement because we're all married, most of us have kids. It's like it's a whole thing.
Oh, that sounds fun. And do you have any? Well, like, what are you have your go-to family? Because what's great about the book is it's divided. You even have, as I was saying to you before we started, the worst. I love that you have the worst. Because sometimes you go, I can't watch It's a Wonderful Life one more time.
Yeah,
or can you?
I manage.
You can watch it every year.
Well, because we live in LA and they project it every year, which is great. So we'll troop out to the Arrow in Santa Monica and see it, and that's become like part of one of the stops, on the Christmas tour. But yeah, I was seeing some terrible ones and some really like beautifully, brilliantly terrible ones, and I was like, yeah, we got to toss those in for variety. But yeah, the book kind of, I think the idea is that whatever kind of movies you like, there's a Christmas movie that fits your niche.
Yeah.
If you're a horror person, if you like action, if you want a tearjerker or a comedy or whatever, or even if you want a terrible movie, like, there's Christmas on offer.
And It's a Wonderful Life has an interesting history because it wasn't necessarily a hit film when it came out.
Yeah, it pretty much bankrupted Frank Capra's production company that he had started. This was the first movie that he and Jimmy Stewart made coming back from World War II. Yeah. And Jimmy Stewart, we now know from biographies, was suffering from PTSD during the shoot, and you can really, there are moments in the performance where that comes through. But I think that's interesting because that movie for him becomes the pivot point between like pre-war sort of aw shucks Jimmy Stewart to like the Anthony Mann, Otto Preminger Jimmy Stewart, Vertigo Jimmy Stewart that we'd be getting not long after. But yeah, so it tanked, it went into the public domain, and then that's why, when we were coming up, it was constantly on television because it was free. And I think, now you have those 24-hour Christmas Story marathons, and I'm pretty sure those are designed to, they got the idea from It's a Wonderful Life by accident, because It's a Wonderful Life was just always on. Like, it would end on one channel, and you'd flip over, and it'd be, 2/3 of the way through somewhere else.
Right. Like, when I was growing up, I remember, there would be It's a Wonderful Life, Meet Me in St. Louis, and The
Right.
Bishop's Wife. And
White,
then
White Christmas.
White Christmas, you're right. They'd always play Top Hat on New Year's Eve. Did you know
Ooh.
that used to? I don't know. I just have a remember because I would be with my relatives, Italian relatives, and they'd be upstairs banging pots, and I would be downstairs watching.
Doing the Continental.
Fred Astaire. I guess they feel like it's sophisticated.
Exactly. Yeah, we're dressed up. It's a New Year's thing.
Yeah, a New Year's thing. But I remember, I think it was in the late 80s, there was a book that came out called like The Making of It's a Wonderful
Yes.
Life. And that was the first time that I sort of that I felt that they were considering Christmas movies as sort of artistic, like, oh, there actually may be a theme here.
Yeah, I think for the most part, they're sort of looked upon as there's either good movies that happen to be Christmas movies that you like for whatever reason. But I don't think anybody's really sort of taken it seriously as a genre. And I mean, and this isn't an academic book. I'm not like, there aren't footnotes. I'm not getting deep into this. But, I just think that what I think is cool about it is that, we think of the It's a Wonderful Lives and the White Christmases and that kind of thing as the sort of obvious go-tos. But when you start digging a little and you say, oh, well, Eyes Wide Shut is a Christmas movie, or Metropolitan or The Lion in Winter, these are Christmas movies. And people kind of take a step back and go, oh yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, sure. And so it sort of expands the definition.
Well, plus because you can have your own sort of film festival
Absolutely.
at home throughout the holidays. You don't have to keep, watching the same one. So I want to talk about some of the more obscure ones.
Oh, sure.
Because there were ones that I even hadn't. What was the Deanna Durbin one that you mentioned?
Christmas Holiday. Yeah,
Christmas Holiday. So tell me about that one.
Which, sadly is in this kind of copyright hell in the U.S., so it's never been released on home video.
Darn.
I know at TCM they want to show it every year and they just can't get their hands on it. It was a Universal movie. It's a Robert Siodmak noir film. It was Deanna Durbin's first grown-up role. Like she was, the sort of, juvenile ingenue, but this was her like, I'm a woman, and so it's based on this Somerset Maugham story where in the story she's like a singer in a whorehouse. In the movie they keep it kind of vague. It's like, it's a hotel or something. But basically, it's that this guy, this GI gets written a Dear John letter. He wants to go home for Christmas to confront his ex-fiancée, but the plane gets stuck in New Orleans. He meets Deanna Durbin's character, takes her to Mass, learns her tale of woe, where she'd been married to this guy who seemed charming, but turned out to be like a compulsive gambler and had this mommy fixation. That guy is played by Gene Kelly. So you've got Gene Kelly and Deanna Durbin in this like really dark noir film, which is super antithetical to anything they ever did, and it's really terrific. And I wish more people could see it. And I'm holding out hope that one of these years they'll clear up whatever the legal problem is. Because I had to get a DVD out of the UK to even watch it.
Wow,
that would be that was a good one. Now another great thing you have is I love all the fun facts that you have. That's a great, so you can read the movie and you can see things about where the location was. One of the things I liked was that the film Christmas in Connecticut and Bringing a Baby used the same set.
Yeah, the outside of the farmhouse.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and then also, like,
how did you notice? You just noticed it?
No. I read it somewhere. Like the Academy Library is a very helpful resource if you live in LA. Like they've got everything. I also found out that the neighbor's house, I think in Christmas Vacation, that's on the Warner Ranch, was Danny Glover's house in Lethal Weapon.
Oh yeah,
which is also a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I think I read that one. Now, what about this movie? This sounded so. I've never heard of this movie. Trapped in Paradise. 1994, written and directed by George Gallo.
Yes,
who had a very promising start. Nick Cage, John Lovitz, Dana Carvey, Machen Amick.
Yeah.
And it's Fox.
Yeah, it's a comedy where Cage, Lovitz, and Dana Carvey. Yeah, there we go.
I want to see it.
Yeah, they play siblings. Nicolas Cage is the one who's sort of trying to go straight, but they're all kind of like have criminal backgrounds, and so Lovitz and Carvey get like a Christmas furlough out of prison, and they overheard some guy wanting to like do a bank job in this tiny little town. So Cage gets dragged along to do the bank job, and then of course they can't leave. There's like just one complication after another, and of course the longer they stay, it's one of those little towns where they fall in love with everybody and they feel bad about having stolen their money, and complications ensue.
Oh, okay.
And their mother is played by Anne Ramsey from Throw Mama from the Train.
Oh, the great Anne Ramsey. And you said we were talking about quick change, but you said it's got that vibe of quick change.
Kind of, yeah. In terms of just the sort of like absurdist caper movie,
Now wait a minute. Why is Lady in the Lake? Come on.
That's totally Christmas. Have you seen it lately?
Not in a while.
The opening credits are all on Christmas cards. There's a great scene where like Audrey Totter is like standing next to a Christmas tree holding a gun. The whole thing is set at Christmas.
I guess I thought so much of just the weirdness of them looking
at the first person.
Yeah. Okay, let me look at the fun facts. With the Christmas cards, I like that. Ames is known for being the father in Meet Me in St. Louis. Right, in the first movie told from the point of view.
For people who don't know the film, it's Robert Montgomery as is it Philip Marlowe or?
I think it's by Raymond Chandler, so he must be Marlowe.
So he's Philip Marlowe, and the premise of the film is that the camera is Philip Marlowe.
Yeah.
So everybody's talking to the camera. It's all directly first person.
Yeah.
The only time you hear Robert Montgomery's voice throughout. Yeah, see?
I love it.
But
I never realized.
You only see Robert Montgomery in the mirror.
Yes, finally you see him in the one. I have the poster. Which is very disturbing. Where he's I have that poster.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean it's very gimmicky, but it's a cool idea, and it's almost an experimental film in a way.
Go! You have Go in there.
Yeah,
John August, right? Is that his first screenplay? I think
this is directed by Doug Liman.
Yeah, John August wrote it. Yeah,
John August.
He wrote that on spec, and now he's like John August. But
and giving gigs to Melissa McCarthy from the get go. That's one of her first.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's very interesting. Do you have? Is the ice storm a Christmas movie or no? It's just the snow.
I think it's just winter.
Just the snow.
Do you have specific criteria that like this can count?
Oh, good question.
Oh, I leave that up to folks because I get asked all the time. Like this year, people were like, "Oh, well, is Hustlers a Christmas movie?" Because there's one big scene that's set at Christmas, and somebody asked if The Irishman was. I'm like, well, if you think it is, sure. I mean, because I have female trouble in there. There you go. I have female trouble in there, which really just has the one scene early on where she doesn't get the cha-cha heels for Christmas and she dumps the Christmas tree on her parents, and that's it. But it's such an iconic scene that I included anyway. So I think sometimes you get movies where Christmas happens, but only because they want to show the passage of time, and that's just an easy way to say December.
Right.
But if for you think of that moment as being Christmassy, then absolutely. I mean, there are people who think of The Sound of Music as a Christmas movie just because they would always watch it with their family at Christmas time, even though there's not a second of Christmas in it. So far be it for me to canonize anything. But for me, generally, it's sort of like if there's at least one specific moment that's very Christmassy. If there's a sense of Christmas throughout the film, if it affects the plot in any way. Like I've always defended Die Hard as a Christmas movie because the fact that the party is happening on Christmas Eve is part of the plan. The building's going to be empty. There's not going to be people in the streets. And on another level, it's a movie about a husband and wife who reconcile on Christmas Eve, and her name is Holly. Come on.
This is one of my. I love this movie. Nobody's Fool.
Oh, so great.
That is such an underrated film with a fantastic soundtrack.
One of the last, maybe the last Jessica Tandy movie. Definitely late Paul Newman and late Robert Benton.
I think that's what you say, and then you said this threw me. Newman and Willis had worked together previously. The latter had been a bit player in The Verdict.
Yes.
How'd you find that? How did you
research?
See, sometimes it's like you just be watching something. Like I was watching the movie Francis Farmer, and I'm like, wait a minute, is it Kevin Costner as an extra? And then
wow,
yeah. And then when I did a movie with him, I said, I've seen a lot of your work, specifically
Francis.
So it's fun to rib people that way, But no, I didn't know that. So now I want to look at, And I love that film.
And a great Bruce Willis performance and a very early Philip Seymour Hoffman appearance.
Yeah, and Paul Newman is fantastic in it. Again, one of my, that seems to be a hallmark for me of a Christmas movie is the location, and there's a great location.
Yeah, the snowy little town.
They're in upstate New York, right?
Yes,
I think.
and a great early scene-stealing Margot Martindale appearance.
Oh yeah, that's
She's
right.
the bartender.
Yes, there's all sorts of great little. Oh, but I love that town.
Yeah.
And Melanie Griffith is in it. She's
really great in that too.
She's fantastic. Do you think that like Christmas movies explore certain themes? I mean, renewal.
Yeah, redemption I think is a big one.
Redemption.
There's something about Christmas where I think for conflicts, especially within families, there's something about the idea that Christmas is that time that we're going to finally have that conversation that clears the air, or we're going to decide to forgive somebody, or the thing is going to happen that's going to mend, this broken relationship.
Yeah.
And there's something ineffable about the Christmas season where we think that's when it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like it feels like you have to tread the family Christmas theme. You have to tread very lightly because there's some movies like Once Around, which I really love.
Oh yeah.
But then more recently, like that movie, The Family Stone, it just felt like...
Not a fan.
Yeah, like it's just... You want to get behind. I mean, I feel like a Christmas movie you inherently want to get behind.
Sure.
I don't know why.
I do, definitely. But yeah, no,
I would defend The Family Stone personally.
Yes.
I want to make... It's funny.
It
I
has
love
fans,
it.
no, for sure.
And I love SJP, but
Okay.
I think it might be... I love a dysfunctional family dramedy, and I feel like I was the
at
exact
Christmas.
age.
At
That's
Christmas,
that's my
you know?
favorite kind of
Yeah.
Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And the French, I think, do it really well. Like there was a movie a few years ago called A Christmas Tale with Catherine Deneuve and Mathieu Amalric that I think is just great.
Oh,
Great.
okay.
One called La Bûche that's harder to find, unfortunately, but it's really funny. But the Ref, which I have taken a couple of years off because I'm not ready to deal with Kevin Spacey again yet.
know.
Yeah.
But a great movie otherwise. Richard LaGravenese wrote and directed that one. But yeah, I love a bickering family at the holidays. That's my eggnog.
Another theme seems to be love at Christmas.
Sure, well, yeah.
That always is like...
I mean, that's the entire Hallmark network is built upon that idea.
Well, and again, I was trying to think why that is. Is that because again, that's our hope? I mean, it's tough to be alone at the holidays. It really does. It is when you miss people that are no longer with you. It just it tugs at your heartstrings.
Well, there's a line in a Christmas Carol, something about like this is the time of year where need is more keenly felt, and I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing with loneliness. Well, because so much of the holiday is about community and family and togetherness, and so if you don't have those things, you're seeing it around you. You're seeing it in TV
you fixed me.
and,
Wait.
Diagnosing Illeana.
But no, I think also the thing about love stories at Christmas is that there's something about Christmas that I think encourages us to be our best selves.
Yes.
And so maybe
that's
our best
true.
selves is the one that is open to being vulnerable, that's open to being receptive to love.
I feel that way. Like you watch a movie like Love Actually, but then the problem is you try to really act like that. And people,
It doesn't, it's tricky
like,
to pull off.
Can I help you? People in LA don't seem to
Ma'am, this is an
get
Arby's.
as much into, because where I'm from, you're from Ohio, and
Yeah.
I'm from, when I go home to New England, it's like you spend 10 minutes talking to the grocer about something, and no one is behind you and irritated.
It
and
never
something.
feels like Christmas in LA to me, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, Alonso.
Well,
but
I grew up in the South,
hard.
so like
Okay.
I've never had a white Christmas in my life.
Yeah.
So having an 80-degree Christmas here as opposed
Yeah.
to like a 65-degree when at home is like that a huge difference. And one of the things I like about Shane Black is how much he really loves the idea of how artificial an LA Christmas is. You look at a movie
Right.
like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and it's all like palm trees wrapped in twinkle lights and stuff.
Yes. That's the same thing with the movie, which I don't think is in here because it's somewhat problematic, is Reindeer Games,
Yes.
which uses the whole, Christmas, deconstruct it. I've said this before, but one of my favorite DVD commentaries is John Frankenheimer, who does side-by-side scenes of his cut and what they made him do.
So the shade commentary then.
It's
pretty much.
great.
I love
It is so.
listen to that.
It's really entertaining. It made me like, and I would see his scene, and I'd be like, yeah, his scene's better. Like there was unbelievable, and he'd say, "Here's what they made me do," and then
I'm kind of surprised that and I know there are some that exist, but there haven't been any Southern Hemisphere Christmas movies that have really permeated the American consciousness. And I would love to see a movie, that's set in Australia or New Zealand or Brazil, where everyone is just like sweating and surfing or whatever because it's the middle of summer for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I love the movies. For me, The Christmas Carol is one of my. We're going to talk about our favorite films later, but I always again, it just has a tie to childhood and watching it on stage, and I just always liked this idea that a ghost would come from your past, make you be a better person.
I have this weird theory that like A Christmas Carol, It's a Wonderful Life, and Home Alone are all kind of the same story.
Yeah.
In that people are sort of shown alternate versions of their own life and sort of made to appreciate what they have.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Home Alone. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, like when the family, he wishes for the family to go away, and then they do, and then he has to sort of realize what that means, And
right.
so it's sort of like getting that. It's like it's his Pottersville, having the house to himself.
And there is kind of a magical element with Home Alone with the shoveler kind of guy. He's almost like one of the neighbor. He's one of the ghosts that I feel like comes into. That's interesting.
Somebody made a comment. This year was the 20th anniversary of Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, and somebody wrote a piece saying that it's kind of the horny Christmas Carol, and that you can kind of divide the movie into like past, present, and future for the Tom Cruise character.
That's a movie that I have to revisit. I remember seeing the first time I saw it. I was stuck in a snowstorm, so I saw it, and I was actually supposed to be doing a play, and the play was canceled. So I said, well, I guess I'll watch this movie. And then I ended up watching it again because I didn't understand it. And then that was it. That was like, so I feel like I need to revisit it.
Yeah, I think all of his movies get better as time passes. Like, I remember when I went opening day here in LA and thinking, give me 20 years and then maybe I'll know what this movie's about. And I feel like I have a little more of a handle on it now.
That's true. That's what Brian De Palma said about Barry Lyndon. He said, the first time I saw it, I hated it. And over the years, I've seen it so many times, and now I think it's a masterpiece.
No, absolutely.
Like it took a lot of, a lot of work. Okay, so then deconstructing Santa is always fun. I for me, again, another classic. It's got to be. I do watch Bad Santa because that's a movie my mom likes.
Really?
Oh yeah, my mom. And especially now, whoever. If I work with someone, then my mother is like. Then she knows the person.
Of course.
He's so good in this movie. I was watching Billy Bob in Bad Santa. And what I love about this movie is as dark as it is, he does have a little twinkle in his he's got that little slight twinkle in his eye.
Yeah, it's funny. The one thing I discovered in researching the movie is there are like 3 cuts floating around.
Yes.
And
I know.
The director's cut is actually the shortest one. Oh, right, because you worked with Terry Zwigoff.
I know all about the saga of Bad Santa.
Apparently, the director's cut is the shortest one because he wanted to take out every instance where Billy Bob's character was being nice to anybody. So it's the most pungent, the most concentrated version.
And he worked for, talking to like Kubrick, he worked for like 10 years on his own version of it.
Oh, no kidding.
So interesting. What I thought was interesting was it was valid. It was a very different film, but that was valid too. But it was a different movie.
Yeah, I think sometimes director's cuts can like fix a movie, or in rare occasions they're like leave well enough alone. But yeah, sometimes it's sort of like, okay, this is just a different interpretation of this. And so I think they both work in their own way for sure.
Yeah, they have certain similarities, but I happen to love Bad Santa. I just think that's a really...
The thing about Bad Santa is there is a sense of joy in that film.
Sure.
Do you think that's a precedent for a good Christmas movie? Because even I would say the best Christmas horror films still have like a wicked mischievousness, like something that's still, in my mind, if it's just completely bleak and joyless, it's not necessarily a Christmas movie.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of super hardcore bummers in this category.
Yeah.
You could point to a movie like, I don't know, Claude Autant-Laurent's Deuce from the 40s, which is like, it's all set at Christmas, but it's this very sort of noirish thing about this like maid who's trying to like screw over the people that she works for, and it's fun, but it's bleak, you know.
Yeah.
But even like Bergman's Fanny and Alexander, that Christmas segment at the beginning is so joyous and so luminous, and then it's after it's over that the things get dark, and then it kind of picks up again at the end. But yeah, you're right. It's hard to do Christmas without giving some glimmer of hope. I mean, I had a hard time writing the horror chapter of this book because I'm such a wimp about horror movies, and I'm the first to admit it. So I could not get through Maniac, which is an 80s kind of cult classic.
When did who got the idea, like, wait a minute, Christmas, dark Christmas? Like, what was do you know the first?
Probably the first Black Christmas in 74, which was Bob Clark, who then went on to make A Christmas Story. I love that. Those are his yin and yang there.
Love it.
Yeah, I think in general, like for whether it's horror or dark comedies or whatever, there's something about Christmas that feels like the last kind of relatively pure thing, that hasn't been completely commodified or turned into like, the way Halloween has become the sexy nurse costume holiday.
Right.
There's something relatively innocent about Christmas, so it's very easy to do something diabolical in front of Christmas and make it look even more diabolical.
This one's a Christmas Evil.
Yeah, for instance, that's a favorite of John Waters.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's really cool. Brandon Maggart, who is Fiona Apple's father and a Tony winner, plays this guy who is obsessed with Santa and Christmas, and then snaps as you do. It's really quite good. And there's a Blu-ray of it that has the director and John Waters doing a commentary.
Oh, wow. That sounds fun.
Yeah. A thing I recently learned, the guy who made the film was obsessed with the films of Alain Resnais. And he actually went and found like one of his cinematographers, I think the guy who shot Stravinsky, and got him to come shoot this movie.
Wow. Okay, that one sounds very interesting, but I'd have to see that with during the day.
Yeah, with the lights on.
And then you have Gremlins, awesome.
Yeah.
We love Joe Dante.
We love Joe.
There's a movie called Silent Night. There's Silent
Bloody
Night. Yeah, Silent Night, Deadly Night is the slash movie everybody knows.
Okay.
Silent Night, Bloody Night, I'd never heard of until doing the research.
Never heard of it.
Mary Warrenov and her then husband made it together, and it has all these like Warhol Factory people in it. There's like there's a scene that's like a flashback to sort of an orgy in a madhouse or something. I forget exactly what it is, but like Ondine is in it, and all these other sort of Warhol Factory folks who I guess they had in their Rolodex. It's a cool. It feels like one of those. We were talking, those 70s made for TV movies.
Yeah.
Not so much the Sarah T, but the those really kind of bleak, low budget horror movies where it's always like this house in the middle of nowhere. And it was always, like the sky is slate gray and maybe there's a ghost,
Yeah, this one sounds interesting. It sounds very arty.
It is.
And then you have Silent Night, Deadly Night. That's 1984.
Which has like 4 or 5 sequels.
Yeah, that was the big. Isn't there's like a dark Christmas movie out this year, I think.
There's a Black Christmas remake, actually. It's coming out this week.
So there's a lot.
And I'm excited about that one because April Wolf, who was a film critic for a long time and we used to co-host a podcast together, is the co-writer on it. So
okay, I never heard of this. Whoever Slew Auntie Roo. That sounds like a Monkees episode.
It's Shelley Winters.
Oh my God, we love Shelley Winters.
And it's basically a take on the Hansel and Gretel story.
Wow.
With the kid, is it the kid from Oliver? I think, right? Mark Lester.
It's directed by Curtis Harrington, starring Shelley Winters. Mark Lester, yes.
Yeah, the kid from Oliver and his sister wind up pushing her to another.
Wait a minute, Sir Ralph Richardson.
Oh yeah. And Curtis Harrington was like this great sort of like he did. Is it High Tide? We did the Dennis Hopper movie from the '60s. It's kind of the High Tide or Low Tide or
yes, I know the
like
name
that.
Curtis Harrington.
And he was very much in the sort of like
Ryan, help us out.
The kind of Hollywood witchcraft circle. Like apparently,
I've got to see Who Slew Annie Roo.
Lisa Jane Persky wrote this amazing article about his Curtis Harrington's funeral, where Kenneth Anger got up and claimed that Harrington had like summoned a Dybbuk or something. He was very into the the sort of LA seance scene.
Yeah, that one sounds really
Night Tide.
Night Tide, thank you. I knew there was a tide in there somewhere.
Yes.
Wow, that one sounds really good. Okay,
a lot
now
of
we're going to
fun.
get into the worst. Like, what qualified? Were there more that you had to leave out?
Well, there have been more since the book came out. I'll say that.
Oh,
much.
really?
Like, yeah, the year.
I love the picture you had. It's crazy.
Yeah,
You had a very funny picture
that's from
here.
the
Oh, here it
1959
is.
Mexican Santa Claus.
I
which-
mean, that is a great. I don't know if they can see that.
the more I see that movie, I don't know if it's Stockholm
right
syndrome
up.
setting in, but like I kind of think now that it's maybe kind of brilliant. But it's a low budget movie from the guy who's
Hysterical.
probably best known in this country for directing a movie called Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Mummy, and it's all about Santa and you know he fights a demon from hell named Pitch, whom the devil has sent to Earth to stop Christmas. But Santa has Merlin on his side. It's bonkers.
Wow.
But it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I think I was also trying to pick like movies that were bad,
Sort of
but
kitschy,
fun to watch.
yeah.
You know, so it's like Santa Claus the movie. I think is really bananas, but it also has this insane scenery chewing performance by John Lithgow that you just have to see. You know, and then there's. You know, like the Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny and the Magic Christmas Tree, which is these like really super low budget movies from the 60s that you just don't even know where they came from. Like the Magic Christmas
Yeah.
Tree, when I did the research, every single person in that movie was the only credit they have on IMDb. Like the director, the producer, the writer, the cast, like nobody ever did anything else, but they all somehow made this one wackadoo movie.
One and done.
So this one, Get Yourself a College Girl. I mean, like, how did you even find it?
Well, you know, like
you just you knew about
IMDb
it.
gives you categories sometimes.
Oh,
you know,
I
and
see.
so
Then
I would chase things down. Yeah, Get Yourself a College Girl is one of those sort of like teen dance party movies.
I
where,
love movies like that's a theme I love. You know, oh my God,
Yeah.
dance movies. I'm in.
They all
Chad
go,
Everett's in it.
Chad Everett's in it. Nancy Sinatra's in it. They go to a ski slope, and you know the Animals and the Dave Clark Five sing. And I think it's the only movie Astrid Gilberto performs in. So you get to see her sing "Girl from Ipanema."
Hairstyles by Sidney Gerloff.
Yes,
They're big.
and boy howdy are their hairstyles. It's Marianne Mobley, I think, is the star. Actually.
Yeah.
Future Miss America.
Oh, and the
or former Miss
producer was
America.
Sam Katzman.
Yes.
So he was like a legendary, did all sorts of low budget, you know, kind of films here.
Yeah, he was one of the early exploitation kings.
Santa and the Ice Cream. I'm just going to go through them because they're all so crazy.
know.
Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny.
Yeah, it was made
No
for
writer credited.
yeah, exactly, because
Just-
nobody wanted to. It was made as a tie-in for some like little theme park in Florida that got destroyed when Disney
wow.
opened, basically.
Yeah.
And there's a whole chunk in the middle of the movie, and depending, this is how like fly by night this is. Some versions in the middle of it, there's this whole performance of Thumbelina, like but in like a
Yeah.
little amusement park theater, and then in other versions it's some other fairy tale. I forget which now, but again, I think the producer behind it had made all these like really tacky sounding like 60s sex movies, and then Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny.
Yeah. Oh my God! And then you have 6 weeks in there.
Oh, that one's hilarious.
Yeah,
There
that one is-
There is something about a precocious child dying of leukemia after showing zero symptoms for the entire movie that is just like comedy gold.
And Dudley Moore is in it.
Yeah, Dudley Moore and Mary Tyler Moore, who
Wow.
are both hot off of like Arthur and Ordinary People, respectively, and that movie completely like killed their career momentum.
Wow.
Oh my God. Wait, the 6 weeks is, I have to read this, so funny. 6 weeks is the sort of film where dying of leukemia equals being completely healthy until that moment when the patient wails, "It hurts," before suddenly dropping dead.
That is what happens in 6 weeks. Then that's not a spoiler. That's an inducement to watch it.
Yeah. No, that one is, that one is the, there's so many great ones. I gotta put it down.
But I have a whole Scrooge chapter. Like there are so many
versions.
Yeah. You know,
is
like,
that the one that's been the most?
Oh yeah, I think it's the most adapted piece of literature in the movies ever. Like
Yeah.
even more than Hamlet or whatever. And and you see these sort of these trends that happen. Like there was a while there in the '90s where it was all Scrooge is an ambitious career woman,
Right.
So you had your Susan Lucci version and your Cicely Tyson and your Vanessa Williams and your Tori Spelling and but then you also have your musicals and you have your animated ones and like so many.
I know, and they had The Businessman.
Yeah.
I wonder what the current Scrooge would be. I guess, anti-climate or something.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, probably somebody who like runs an oil company or something. But I mean, Scrooge at least made him a TV executive. That was a fun spin on it. But yeah, I mean, it is endlessly permeable. There's something almost sort of like passion play about Scrooge, where the story is in our DNA. We know all the beats of it, and so now it's just a question of changing the specifics and the particulars.
I think that's sort of part of the fun of the Christmas movies too, is that you know them so well. And,
Yeah.
I always joke about the Hallmark movies that if you fall asleep in the middle of one and wake up in the middle of the next one, you will still know what's happening and what's about to happen.
That's true. There's a few that have they've been doing shooting a few of them in Connecticut because of little picturesque. And then most of it they do in Vancouver.
In Vancouver, yeah.
90%. And then
in the lower 48, I'm very excited to hear.
Yeah, there used to be a town where I grew up that, and unfortunately it went out of business, but it was some wealthy people literally bought the entire town and turned it into like a Christmas town. So it was really nice to go visit there. But
my favorite thing about Hallmark movies is figuring out which actor they're like the B- version of. Like I feel like they all have like their doppelganger that they could probably be a stand-in for.
Yes.
Like it's like, oh, we couldn't get Brad Pitt, so we got, or like, oh, we couldn't get, because they all vaguely look like.
Somebody,
people.
And in general, actors are very attractive people, right? But it's always fun to figure out, like, who could you have been, or who do you audition with?
Well, that's kind of like Christian pop music. You can sort of like correlate, well, which secular band is this supposed to be the equivalent of?
Totally, yeah.
But you're not allowed to listen to A, so we're going to give you B.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Jeff, do you have any? I wrote down some of my favorites. I mean, I hated to put Wonderful Life as number one, but what else?
Well, I think
I did too.
My controversial choice is I'm a big Sean Baker fan who did most recently The Florida Project, is the movie that our listeners have probably definitely seen.
Yeah.
But he made a movie like 5 years ago now called Tangerine.
Oh, Tangerine.
Yeah, shot all on iPhone, starring two trans actors playing trans actors, which is great because that does not happen enough.
Right.
And really wonderful performances. That's a really interesting movie, very kinetic, very energetic movie, and I'd call it a Christmas film. It takes place on Christmas Eve.
It's set entirely on Christmas Eve.
Yep.
Also, one of the rare movies that really gets its LA geography right.
Yes.
Like it is set in this conscribed area, and it all like I always know where they are, and it always makes sense that they could have done it on foot or on the bus or whatever it is
all
they're
adds
doing.
up, totally.
And it all winds up at the Hamburger Mary's that is right around the corner from my house. So,
Yeah, we
I love
all
that
live in
movie.
WeHo, actually. I think
Yeah.
we're
Oh, no
pretty
kidding.
geographically close to each other.
Yeah,
And,
I recognize a lot of things.
Yeah, it's like it's an LA that I know. It's funny. I feel like LA so often is portrayed as like the first class privileged LA.
Sure.
But I really like seeing a movie that's like about the corner of, what would that be, Santa Monica and Highland, right? And
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, there used to be the Donut Time. I think it's a Trejo's Tacos now. But
No, it's Trejo's Coffee and Donuts.
Oh, that's right, Trejo's Donuts. But yeah, I feel like it's really nice to see that version of LA because it's very much an LA that most people who live here actually know.
Yeah, and they get the LA light right too, which again you're shooting on an iPhone, so you really have no choice. But I think that's what the title refers to, is just that color of the sky.
Yeah, certainly. But I really like that movie. I love Sean Baker in general, and that there's a Christmas Carol karaoke moment in that movie that I feel like is one of those iconic sort of Christmas song moments for me in that movie. So that would be my kind of obscure pick. I have that at number 5.
What? Oh, that's what you're. For my number 5, I put Christmas in Connecticut. I just love it. For the sort of screwball, and it's about a woman. I guess she's sort of like the Martha Stewart of her day, right? And she writes for a magazine about being the perfect hostess, and it's all fake. She's not married. She
lives in an apartment.
Yeah. So this GI, Dennis Morgan, is coming home from the war, and they think it would be a great idea for him. Oh, there it is. And of course she falls in love with him. to. And then she has to explain. There's a lot of odd scenes with the baby in that.
Yeah, well, there's a thing where like they're borrowing somebody's baby, but they don't borrow the same baby every day, so it changes gender at some point.
Yeah, that's like the one part that, when you're watching movies, you're like, okay, I'm just going to let that go.
There's a whole there's a subgenre of Christmas movies where Barbara Stanwyck is a terrible journalist because, like, Meet John Doe, the movie begins with her getting fired, and then she writes this column about a fake guy, and then
it's one of the weird scenes actually with the baby,
and there's a whole thing about can she flip a flapjack, and yeah, that's a fun movie though.
But it's still fun again about the pressure of the holidays, and even though everything is chaos, it all sort of turns out okay. And
it does say something about like where America was in the 1940s, that you could open a comedy with a U.S. troop ship getting sunk and only 2 people surviving, and that's the initiating incident of a comedy.
Oh my God!
My number 5. This is actually a recent one that is fun, and a horror movie that I did enjoy, even though again wimp, called Better Watch Out, and it's sort of the idea of if the kid from Home Alone were a little older and not fully acknowledging how much of a sadist that he is, but he's like there are home invaders, there's a babysitter, he's trying to protect them. Things get complicated, and there are some really fun twists. It's a really cool movie.
Oh, okay. I'm going to look that one out.
Again, you mentioned it earlier, Die Hard, of course, is a Christmas film. I have that as my number 4. It's funny, I only saw Die Hard for the first time 3 years ago, and I feel like I've always resisted that movie because it so often gets referenced as like the iconic action film, right? And so I feel like sometimes I have a resistance if I feel like something is overhyped or over-referenced.
Of course, yeah.
I feel like I watched it kind of begrudgingly, expecting to find it to be an overrated film, and I finished it and thought like, well, that's a pretty perfect movie.
Yeah, it's the Casablanca of 80s action movies.
It's a really great movie.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Totally. It's totally engaging, and talk about ratcheting up tension. It's sort of a master class of screenwriting, really, is how I view that movie.
Yeah.
So that's my number 4. Love Die Hard.
Good choice.
My number 4, I did Elf. I love it. I love,
Totally.
That's an interesting movie because I remember I did a talk show with Jon Favreau and Will Ferrell, and they were making the movie.
Oh, funny.
And they were very nervous about it.
Is this on the Table for 5?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
And so I remember it was summer and they were making this movie, and they were like, I don't know, this thing's gonna work.
What's great about Elf is like it has such a high wire act between being kind of knowing and ironic and being completely sort of ingenuous.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot of comedies try and fail to make that happen, and they make that they get right in there.
I think it rests on the commitment of everybody, because you're putting on those costumes, again, like it was interesting, talking to Will Ferrell, because he was like, I don't know about this thing, but then when I saw it on screen, it's that, the commitment to it, it just, you just go with it.
Yeah, they're not putting it in quotes, like they're just doing it.
Everybody, I love James Caan in anything, so just like seeing James Caan and Ed Asner.
Yeah.
Was that the beginning of Ed Asner's Santa?
Oh, I think he'd already done some Santas on TV. Yeah, he's one of the greats.
Who's the best Santa?
I don't like the movie, but I love Paul Giamatti as Santa in Fred Claus.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I don't know who I guess I have to.
Edmund O'Brien, Edmund Gwenn rather.
Edmund Gwenn's a good Santa.
Tim Allen's a good Santa.
Yeah.
There's been a bunch.
You know what I just realized? I did a Christmas movie. My God, I think I did it with Hallmark. I totally forgot. It was called A Country Christmas.
Oh, wow.
It was completely financed by Brooks and Dunn.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it was like country in the
Were they in it, or?
I think people they knew were in it, but the Rascal Flatts were in it.
Oh, nice.
It was an excuse to get country music.
Wow.
Oh, there it is.
I bet it pops up on the Hallmark. Hallmark has 3 channels doing Christmas 24/7, so somebody is showing it.
And I only really did it. Kevin Pollak and I have been cast together, and it's just our own. We're our own, William Powell and We've been cast opposite each other. We're like, shall we make it 5? But anyway, it was fun, and I got to end up in like a dung heap. So
Oh, there
I
you
was,
go.
I
You're
was
the villain. Okay,
I was
cool.
the villain. Yeah.
Perfect.
So it was great.
Well, because you're a city lady, so clearly
Would you be
are
the
not.
Scrooge of that movie if you were unredeemed at the end? Technically.
I was unredeemed. I got my comeuppance.
Oh.
Okay.
We want to stamp out Christmas. Me and Kevin Pollak.
Foiled.
Yeah, we're foiled. I end up in a dung heap at the end. I know Ryan's trying to desperately find it.
It's not an episode of our podcast if Illeana doesn't accidentally realize or remember that she was actually in a movie she forgot she was in.
It happens all the time.
It's the best. I love it.
Totally. I'm like, yeah. I could
was
be
in
like
that.
Johnny Weissmuller suddenly yelling out Tarzan on my deathbed. Okay, was there number 4? We're on number 3?
Oh,
Or
no,
did you do
sorry,
4?
no. My number 4 is The Silent Partner, which is a caper movie with Elliot Gould and Susanna York. And Christopher Plummer plays like the most terrifying bank robber who dresses as Santa Claus, but gets outfoxed
Cool.
by Elliot Gould. Curtis Hanson screenplay.
Oh my God, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it came out on
wait.
Blu-ray this year, so check it out.
Okay, that's a good one. All
I'm going
right,
to get in trouble because my number 3 is The Family Stone.
Okay.
I love Diane Keaton always. It's
Well,
funny.
sure, yeah.
You were talking about Christmas movies that aren't necessarily Christmas movies, but
Yeah.
to your family they are because you watch them.
Right.
The Diane Keaton, Steve Martin, Father of the Bride is that for our family.
Oh, okay.
It's been that for just probably 2 decades, really. We watch it every year. So Diane Keaton almost feels like, in a weird way, like my aunt or something. So when she shows up, it always will.
You want to see her at Christmas time.
I want to see her
got you.
Christmas time. So that's part of the reason I love The Family Stone. And that movie also introduced the dysfunctional family dramedy for me. Like I
okay.
kind of marked that as a benchmark for my own cinematic taste and loving family movies. So it's
Yeah.
not a perfect film. There are some tonal issues, but I do find when it's at its most earnest, it works for me. So
Fair enough.
I'll say The Family Stone.
Okay.
All right, my number 3. I'm cheating. I got to do a tie. It's sort of a tie because I had to get Holiday Inn in there because I love Holiday Inn and Bing Crosby, and I love the idea of having a nightclub that only is open. It's like, what's the business plan exactly of that? It's a nightclub and it's only open on holidays. But it does have White Christmas in it,
Yes.
and I love it. It's that's a movie that I always watch if
Sure.
it's on. If
You
it's,
know, maybe fast forward through the blackface scene. But,
Yeah,
you know,
maybe through-
apart
yeah.
from that.
apart from the with them singing Abraham.
Right.
Yes.
But I had to kind of sneak in
sure.
Love Actually.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know, but it's in there because it's not with my 2 and my 1. But I do love that. Love Actually 2 is a movie that if it's on, I watch it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My number 3 is this movie that you and I talked about at Christmas Con. It's called I'll Be Seeing You, another one that I had never heard
Yeah.
of for doing the book. So it's Joseph Cotton and Ginger Rogers. He is coming home from World War II with shell shock, as they called it
Yeah.
at the time. She is currently in prison for having murdered her boss who tried to rape her, and gets like a Christmas sort of furlough to go home.
Yeah.
They meet on a train. Neither of them tells the other one what they're actually about.
Yeah.
He's going out into the world to see if he can still function in the real world or if he needs to just institutionalize himself. And so they're both very broken people, but they
Yeah.
meet at the right time and kind of help each other out, and it's quite lovely. And for a 40s movie, like, it gets into some like dark stuff that you wouldn't expect. And then Shirley Temple, again, like Deanna Durbin, playing one of her first grown-up roles.
That sounds terrific.
Who's like begins being very super judgmental about Ginger Rogers, and then kind of comes to understand why she's in jail and stuff. It's really good.
Wow, that sounds great.
I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I know. I haven't seen that. I love finding out about new movies. I'll be searching on YouTube or Prime.
Yes. My number 2, it's funny, we haven't talked about it as much as I expected to, but I love A Christmas Story. And I
Oh,
feel
yeah,
like
that's-
yeah.
I know.
people
I guess
will,
it's so obvious.
It's
Yeah.
an obvious choice, but I'm from Cleveland,
it's-
so
Oh, well.
you can't not love that movie. And just that, again, you think about really earnestly funny Christmas movies.
Yeah.
That it's a nice balance between kind of sweet and whimsical, but it is pretty funny. That leg lamp scene always plays for me, no matter when I see it or how I see it. So
Right.
I'd put "You'll Shoot Your Eye Out" at least in my personal top 100 quotes for films, and I love it.
I was just having a conversation with somebody about how, like we're getting these sequels to Avatar, and Avatar was the highest grossing film of all time. Nobody quotes Avatar, and nobody has like Avatar merch. But we say you'll shoot your eye out, and people have the leg lamp, and like that movie has so bled into the culture in a way that like much more successful movies don't.
So true. Yeah, I can't think of anything really iconic about Avatar. It's strange. I mean, even narratively, that's a pretty derivative movie, and I like James Cameron a lot. But
no, it was breathtaking to see it in 3D. And I'm not. It's no shade on the movie, but it's just it doesn't. Usually movies that have come to have an impact, like even like Titanic, like if you say I'm king of the world or draw me like your French girls, like people know what you're talking about.
Right.
Nobody quotes Avatar.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I think more of Ben Stiller at the Oscars, which I did think was one of the funniest.
Oh my
that
gosh.
was a great bit.
Yeah,
making fun. That was a shocker.
that's the best thing Avatar has produced.
There you go.
Is that moment at the Oscars?
In my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, I'm going with Shop Around the Corner.
Oh, great one.
God, what a beautiful film that is.
Yes.
I love that movie. And Margaret Sullivan, again, she's not in too many films, so whenever she is, you really sort of savor it. She had such an interesting quality.
Yeah, she like you can sense other actresses going for that same thing that she's doing and not quite nailing it. Yeah. She was sort of sophisticated, but she could also be like, the gal from the country or whatever, but but smart and funny, and I love her stuff.
Yeah, interesting quality, and like again, not quite perfect. I think that's why she works so well in the movie, she's not
relatable.
Yeah, she's not glammed up, or it's not Barbara Stanwyck. She was just particularly right for that, for that
Shop
film.
Girl.
And he always uses all the little character actors. I love how they pop up in all of his films.
Yeah. No, like if you want to sort of introduce somebody to Ernst Lubitsch and why he's special and great, like that's the movie to show him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But I usually if that's on at Christmas, I watch that. When I was a kid, I did love Bishop's Wife, though.
That's a good one,
But
too.
I haven't seen it in a while.
It holds up pretty well.
It does.
I mean, it's weird.
Didn't see the remake.
It's weird because there's this sort of like almost romantic undercurrent to like Cary Grant and Loretta Young, but it's like she's married and you're dead, and but it works. It works.
That's another theme. I do love women in love with ghosts.
Oh, okay.
That seemed to be really popular.
Ghost of Mrs. Muir, and that's probably because World War II, and
Right.
a lot of widows.
I think that's true. Wow. Yeah. All right, what's my excuse?
My number 2 is the 1970 musical version of Scrooge with Albert Finney.
Oh, yes.
Love that one.
That's a great one.
He's one of my favorite Scrooges. He's one of the only actors who plays old Scrooge and young Scrooge, which I think is kind of cool. So like you see him old and he's got the old age makeup and he's all cruel and greedy and whatever. But then there's the flashbacks. It's like hot Albert Finney.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh man, how did that guy become this guy? And yeah, I like the songs. I'm a Leslie Brickus fan from way back.
Yeah.
So, it's I think there are a lot of great ones. The George C. Scott and Alistair Sim and but the Muppets. But I love Scrooge.
I am a sucker just for any Scrooge, the Bill Murray, the Christmas Carol. They're all they're my favorite that's my favorite genre.
It's comfort food, but it's Dickens, so you're allowed to feel smart while you watch it.
Exactly.
It's Christmas.
Yes. My number
it's
1.
Christmas Day.
Yeah, it's incredibly obvious, but I'm gonna Home Alone. That's it for me. That is Christmas for me.
Believe me, it was tough between Home Alone for me too. Home Alone / It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, I mean that movie. I think partly I was born the year that movie came out, so and that was people talk about that movie not only being a cultural Christmas film, but just like a cultural phenomenon in general. So I feel like the way the stars aligned with just my age in that movie, and I just think you can't really outdo it. No movie feels more Christmassy to me, and I'm always so incredibly moved when he sees his mom. That movie for me just there's certain scenes that you'll just always cry when you see him, and the fact that they wrote that he would see his mother first just always touches me so much in that film. So
Yeah.
Home Alone, the strangest thug movie ever made.
I wonder if you'd be able to. I mean, it's such an obvious thought, but it's like, again, would you be able to make a movie like that today, where they'd say it's horrible? They can't leave this child.
They just announced they're doing a new version for Disney Plus.
Oh, they are?
With
Yeah.
one of the kids from Jojo Rabbit. Yeah, so we'll see. My first thought was, so he's going to have no internet and no cell phone, right? Because
know.
otherwise, it's
Oh,
a
you're
5-minute
right.
movie.
Facebook status. He tweets out, "Please help."
Exactly.
The end.
I'm home alone.
The end.
Yeah,
It
he
only takes-
TikToks his.
It's got the great, the Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci are, to me, really make the movie. They're
Yeah.
fantastic villains. I mean, again, I keep thinking of this theme, like, you've got to commit to a Christmas movie.
Yes.
150%.
Yeah.
In an almost cartoon,
Yeah, because if Home Alone didn't go for it, it would have been a mess. That movie
Yeah.
wouldn't. It only works because of how broadly it's drawn, I think.
Yeah, and I mean that was such a hit. It inspired so many knockoffs that didn't
Right.
work, and so you can
Right.
sort of pick out, okay, well, this didn't do that one, and the things that Home Alone gets right that so many other movies get wrong.
Interesting.
I went with It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Just because it's a movie that, although there's so many times I've seen it, but it always gets to me. And again, like you said, whatever is going on with him emotionally,
Yeah.
it just works so much. And that scene where he comes home and he's irritated with everybody,
yeah.
and where he comes from where they start out. I think it's a really truthful depiction of how you can feel around the holidays, the
Yeah.
pressure of not having any money and not being able to get presents and all those kind of things, and what's really important and what.
Nathan Rabin just wrote this amazing piece about now that he's a father, that scene that you talk about where he's all irritated, but then when he like grabs his youngest son and like starts weeping, he goes, that scene kills him now.
Yes.
That it's just like it's become so powerful. But yeah, every time I watch it, even though I've seen this movie a million times, I know
Right.
everything that's going to happen when Uncle Billy loses that money.
God,
My
I
whole
know.
insides start collapsing. Like, oh God, no! And I just know the next 45 minutes is just going to be agony, and then I'm going to be rewarded with like the greatest happy ending in the history of movies. But they make you earn it every single time.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's true. I always get upset too with poor Gloria Graham, because she's always Gloria Graham becomes
Violet Bick.
Yeah, she becomes a prostitute, and I think that's a really interesting too. That they really again commit to this idea that of thinking about if you weren't here, what would happen, and that we all have some importance
To somebody.
Yeah, beyond, like, you didn't have to go off and be a war hero. And I think it's important to kind of think about that as,
Especially in this business, right?
a Christmas. And I
Yeah.
love the dancing scene too. I think that's
Oh,
just
yeah,
a
yeah.
magical, another.
An actual, that's the floor of the Beverly Hills High gym.
Yeah.
Which really does that. There is a pool
Is it the
underneath
Venice High School or is it Beverly Hills?
I think it's Beverly Hills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's funny because then, the Marlo Thomas did a made-for-TV remake of it in the 70s where she was the George Bailey character.
Oh, God.
There's a lot going on in that movie, but they
yeah.
shot it in the same place so they could do the thing again.
The old switcheroo.
Yeah.
And, of course, Lionel Barrymore. He's the classic when you think of a Christmas villain. How many Mr. Potters?
And a Happy New Year in jail. Yeah. He did a radio version of Scrooge every year that had become really popular, and that was sort of why he got cast in that role.
He's perfect. I can't imagine.
It's like what you're saying with the Lubitsch, that the ensemble of that movie, like he populates that town with so many great faces, with like Thomas Mitchell and Beulah Bondi, and like and so many of those are become like the sort of fabric of American movies of that era. So like that whole small town just kind of feels like it is populated with all these people that we know because we've seen them so many times before.
I also like the idea too. Frank Capra would always have like Mr. Macaroni. Oh, it's always like
Martini.
Yeah, Mr. Martini.
But yeah, it's like I'm a broader stereotype. Hey.
Getting the housing for This is whole, we're learning. I remember when I was a kid, like it just seems so scary. This idea that you could lose your house and this old bank, and then in a weird way, this happened.
Yeah, I know. There's so much
actually happened.
So much. So much of history repeats itself, and so many of Capra movies, like Meet John Doe. When I was doing the book, you have this whole thing where like there's this grassroots movement of people, and they're just sort of like looking out for their neighbors and taking care of each other, and then Edward Arnold sweeps in as this like awful business guy who wants to like take it over and use it for nefarious purposes. And when I saw that movie was when like the Koch brothers were coming in and creating all those like fake town hall things for people to fight against the Affordable Care Act. And I was like, it's all happening again.
Wow.
Oh, God. It's hard. Well, it's good to have Christmas movies this time of year because, we certainly need.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's becoming hard? Again, it's hard to reinvent the Christmas film when things are. What is left? What do you think is left?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that we've been seeing in the last few years is that because Hallmark and Lifetime have really taken over so much of the space, that movies that open theatrically kind of have to figure out, well, what can we do that's different?
Right.
And so you've been seeing more like movies with all or mostly black casts because those aren't happening so much on Lifetime. You're seeing like the R-rated Christmas movies, whether they're horror movies or comedies, because it's like, well, you're not going to get this on TV. We can push the boundaries a little more. So I think there's always a response to like, well, you're already getting this. Let's try this,
Right.
And so I think it's a flexible enough genre that there's an infinite number of ways to go about it.
I feel like that the one thing you could try again is the road trip movie, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because that is, I think that's still really relatable. Like that day that you put down your work gear and you get on the flight or whatever and you go home and there's just that. And
it's winter, so like in certain parts of the country, like the roads are going to be messed up, or your engine's not going to deal with the cold well. Like you're right. There's a lot of it half of it writes itself in terms of just the time and place.
Have there been any just specifically gay Christmas films?
Well, interestingly, there's one this year that it's streaming. It's called Season of Love. That they're really kind of aiming at the sort of Hallmark
oh my God,
market.
A totally gay Hallmark movie.
It's a lesbian. It's a three lesbian couples, but it's otherwise very much in the kind of Hallmark tradition. I even sort of jokingly, I told the filmmaker, I said, I noticed you included the empty coffee cups. Every time, like someone's like, "Oh, hey, I brought coffee." The cardboard cup with the plastic lid, and there's nothing in it because it was just waving around like crazy. But anyway, Season of Love. It's very charming. I want there to be more of them. I think that's a niche that's waiting to be occupied. There have been a few attempts over the years of a movie called Make the Yuletide Gay, and the comedy that I like a lot called Breakfast with Scott. But yeah, I think we're really waiting for like a really good one.
Kind of Rent, right?
Rent, I mean, it is a Christmas movie and it is gay inclusive, but I think we're stretching it.
Yeah.
I think entirely gay families with their kids.
Oh yeah,
would be
just
a funny.
Think of the sweaters.
Just the whole. I think that would be funny. That would be. I mean, I would laugh. Anyway.
I think you could do a Christmas in Connecticut with like
let's do it. We're writing it right now.
Where it's like one of the Queer Eye guys who's supposed to be like good at cooking or whatever, and it turns out he's been faking it all along.
I think that would be.
That's a great pitch.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
it's our idea.
No one
we're
take
copyright.
It. Yes.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
Getting us in the spirit. Now I'm excited. You mentioned so many good movies to see.
Well, I hope that when people pick up the book, they have a highlighter and they
Go get it on Amazon.
It sends you to chase down some movies you haven't seen before. So
it does. There's certainly a bunch. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, we had Alonso Duralde on. Of course, Alonso, you have a couple podcasts, Linoleum Knife, which you do with your husband. And then you're doing a podcast over Maximum Fun, Who Shot You, right?
Who Shot You, right.
That's Ifi Nwadiwe, you and...
Drea Clark.
Yes, and Drea Clark. And what else? What else can we find you?
And then Breakfast All Day, which is I used to do a show on TYT called What the Flick, and then they got rid of all their non-political shows. So Christy Lemire and Matt Atchity and our mutual friend Ben Mankiewicz and I decided to keep the band together. So now we're doing Breakfast All Day. It's a podcast, and you can catch us on YouTube.
Oh,
and
very
speaking
cool.
of podcasts, guys, it would mean a lot if you guys could hop on iTunes and give us the Apple Podcast now is what we're officially supposed to call it. But give us those 5 stars. It really means a lot.
5
Yes,
people.
I've been seeing
all 5.
All 5. I've been seeing more reviews come in, and it really means a lot. And when we see reviews we love, we do read them on air. So keep bringing those. And of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel here at the Popcorn Talk. An exciting show next week, Illeana.
Yes, our friend Larry Karaszewski.
Yes.
We're going to be going to him live and talking about Dolomite, which is one of my favorite films of the year.
Definitely.
God, I love that film
Yeah.
so much. I'm so happy for him. So we're going to be talking to him next week. Then we're going to be home watching Christmas movies for the rest of the time. But anyway, thank you again, everyone, so much for listening in, and we enjoy all of your comments. As we always end the show, everyone's life is like a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Today was a Christmas movie, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So long.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of its owners or principals.